Welcome back to the Safety Concepts podcast, Boundaries Part 2-ish. We're exploring some Patreon supporter questions, guest starring Treek Meek, the most alliteratively named dog in the world. So we are really pretty annoyed with our top Patreon subscriber, Brian. He's asked us a straightforward multi-part question that has no good direct answers. So
he asked a simple question that doesn't have a simple answer.
So we're just going to ramble, and he's just going to like it.
Yeah. Remember, Brian, you wanted this.
You called this down on yourself.
Speaking of which, let's cut in Brian's question real quick for those who missed it the first time. Wayne's World effect here.
Last time you talked about boundaries. When I think about boundaries, I think about personal boundaries versus cultural boundaries and negotiable boundaries versus non-negotiable boundaries. On the one hand, if we enforce our boundaries a little bit too vigorously, we create a lot of conflict for ourselves that we don't need to have. But on the other hand, if we don't enforce certain boundaries, then we end up getting taken advantage of. So how do we give ourselves a reality check to make sure that we're enforcing the right kinds of boundaries at the right times and letting one slide if we need to when we find ourselves in situations that are maybe a little bit uncomfortable but not really threatening?
So there you go. That's Brian's question. Damn you, Brian.
Yeah.
And we spent the first part, I don't know, Jenna, summarize what we accomplished. If anything.
We accomplished to talk in circles. We talked about the need to not only set boundaries, but continually manage them. We had it boiled down to the fact that you don't actually have to set and manage your boundaries, but you do have to be prepared to deal with the consequences of all that entails. We discussed how Marc is Marc, and he's going to say inappropriate things, and we're not going to be able to stop him. There's going to be bleeping. What did I miss? We talked about a lot of stuff. It's hard.
We laid a foundation of how much we don't consciously think about controlling our boundaries, and how often we get upset when we have to, which is sort of like objecting to the fact that you have to eat. It's a fact of life. And if your expectations about boundaries are unrealistic, you're going to spend a lot of your time frustrated. So adjusting your expectations is a really important part.
Well, right. So when we were doing our quick recap here to figure out where to go from that 10,000 foot overview of not only where to start with this question, right? But also what background you need, what sort of framework is the best for approaching it, right? Mm-hmm. And how, in what ways people who are unfamiliar with this and how far it reaches, can get familiar with it, right? We touched on all that stuff in the first video. And when we were recapping that, we kind of boiled this question down to boundaries. How do I do the thing? What is the thing, which is what we tackled a lot in the first video. And then how much do I do the thing and when do I do the thing is also kind of built into that as well, right?
And with that comes, we're now moving from 10,000 to 5,000.
Right.
And this is one of those things, well, how do I do this thing? Well, most people look at boundary setting like a microwave oven. What button do I push? No. There's a lot more that goes into this, and that's what I want to talk about now.
Right.
Is, we've discussed what are boundaries. Do you know where you need to enforce boundaries? Do you know what levels of boundaries? And how is this information going to just go, oh, I understand it, unless you actually think about it? And that's what I want to do today.
That's very simple. Anytime the cop tells me to do something,
I
tell him I do what I want. You don't know me. And then it's better.
Don't listen to him.
Yeah. Yeah, well, no.
There's your permission.
No, actually, no. Let's play with that. I mean, here's one of the things. Again, this goes back into, well, nobody can tell me what to do. Yeah. Actually, there are situations that, when Officer Friendly tells you it's time to go home, it's time to go home.
Well, as the ancient Greek philosopher Cartman once said, whatever, I do what I want.
And there are people that you will encounter that is their attitude. Okay. Now, the question is, are you in a situation where that's fine? Because, hey, you know what? I say, don't walk out into the street, and somebody says, I do what I want. If I have no connection to that guy, vaya con Dios. See, I left the rest of that one. Go with God, because nobody's going to save you. Right? On the other hand, if it's your kid telling you, I do what I want, it's like, See? So you need to look at it and understand that boundaries are contextual.
Which gets back to the idea of scripts in some ways.
There's a large part. We talked about scripts last time, but I'm also talking about what are your boundaries in your bedroom versus what are your boundaries when you're, like, say, at a baseball game.
Well, the biggest difference between my bedroom and a baseball game is that sometimes there's other people at the baseball game.
Are you saying that there's scoring going on there, but not?
I'm trying to keep this conversation out of foul territory.
Yeah, there you go.
Here we go with the puns again.
There you go. Well, you're batting 1,000. Anyway, but no, one of the concepts. Don't go down there. One of the concepts that I like to teach is the difference between personal space and shared space. Right? Your boundaries,
That is personal space.
No respect.
That's on you.
Actually, that's actually a really good example, right? If you
do
don't
you
want the dog licking you, you just got to set the boundary. And
I thought you were saying you shouldn't walk up to people that you don't know and lick them.
Well,
or you shouldn't just lick people if they're
I was 25 when I learned that. Oh, no. Great way to stop unacceptable behavior is a nose lick.
But my point with the dog is the dog doesn't have emotions that they're going to get butthurt over you setting a boundary. They actually need that to cope.
Dogs are wired to exist in a pack with a hierarchy. So are humans.
Yes, they thrive on that.
Right,
so
they need
his trainer once told me, to give a good correction, just be fair about it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if he's not doing what he's supposed to be doing at that time, you give him a physical correction, a verbal correction.
That's enough.
And as long as you're fair about what you're doing with the dog,
Right.
he's going to respect you and remember next time, oh, she does mean business.
Right.
I better do what I'm supposed to do.
Well, you have to establish that you are the alpha of the pack.
Right.
Now, a lot of people don't understand what that means, right? And, this is...
Who got that misconception started? We should go talk to that guy.
Because people have emotions. It's not as cut and dry for people as it is for a dog.
Okay.
Let's do a small sidetrack here.
This is a
great deviation. That actually, let's relate it to what we're talking about in advance. This is a great case study in
unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences, or the fun part to joke about. But on a bigger scale, this is how you self-evaluate, use your own knowledge, how concepts change over time, why background's important, all this metacognition, thinking about thinking type of stuff.
Yeah.
Without further ado,
I was walking down Hollywood Boulevard with my ex, who, there's a reason she's an ex. And I said, we got to get there. And, it was a theater that we were going. And she turned and started plowing through the crowds on the boulevard. Now, that's a great way to get killed. So
this isn't the Hollywood Boulevard now, we should add. This is...
Yeah, this was back then.
In the bad old days.
And she's just plowing through these guys, and I'm trying to catch up to her, and they're looking at me, and this is,
Control your woman.
yeah, this was control your woman time with these guys, because they were of certain ethnic backgrounds, Guess what? We're not all white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. These people have these rules. So I had to haul. Yeah, I moved quickly, grabbed her by the scruff, pulled her back, and I said, stop, you're going to make me have to kill somebody. Because these guys were getting upset. Now, the problem is I had to go into uber werewolf mode because they were thinking of, like, control your woman, looking at me, that they were holding me responsible, and I had to be very ferocious. And they're like, oh, okay, well, let this one slide. And I tried to explain to her that her behavior was disrespecting them and disrespecting me. And in order for me to keep us safe, I had to have a certain status. And I tried to explain it to her, or I explained it to her in terms of an alpha, using a very bad model of wolves, that I had to be an alpha on the street in order to get respect. Then I published that in my book, Cheap Shots, and I was explaining...
Now available in a second edition on Amazon.
Yeah, all that. The problem
Cover's
was...
great. You should check it out.
People decided, I have to be an alpha, without understanding what that meant. And I'm the guy who introduced the term alpha to the self-defense world, and yeah, it was a mistake because of I know what that means. No, that's not what I'm talking about. And, that's the same thing of what we're talking about here is if you don't have the background information to understand the concept,
right,
you're going to screw it up.
And sometimes the concept isn't correct, or the understanding of the concept isn't correct.
Right.
So...
Well, and I mean, that's where it's like, I know what that means. No, you don't. And by the time they're like 8 steps down the path of that's the wrong way to go. For example, I'm an alpha, I'm not the beta. Well, the problem is, it turns out that the idea of the beta wolf being the little, no, that's not true. The beta's the thug. Beta's the enforcer. Okay, he's not the leader, he's the goon. And more importantly...
Because the leader's got a guy for that.
Yeah, exactly. But more importantly, here's the thing. The beta is the goon. He's also expendable. Okay, so if there's a danger, he's the one who goes out and gets sacrificed protecting the rest of the pack. Right? So the leader is the thinker, the beta is the enforcer and the goon. Then you get all these other rules. But people are like, I'm not a beta. Well, first of all, you're acting, you think your version of an alpha is actually a beta. And you're screwing things up. You're violating people's boundaries. You're doing all this aggression that is, really problematic. But you think it proves I'm an alpha.
This is this would be a good time for me to, for your feedback as well. Because the easiest place to teach yourself about boundary violations is a bar, right? You've spent more time in a bar than anybody should have spent, or clubs or whatever. I bounced for a few months, and I've certainly, being just now 30, my 20s, spent a decent amount of time, although I don't love the environment.
And I drank.
So I've been told.
Yeah.
So I've been told. I hate bars partially because I people watch. And if I have a couple drinks, it's hard for me to turn that off. So I just see all the desperation and the mistakes.
There's all the stuff, yeah.
Right, but if I'm being real with myself, right? Because one of the big lessons here is that we're telling you about stuff that we're studying for ourselves, right? We're not better than any of this. We don't have it all figured out, blah, blah, blah. I hate watching that display because I spend so much time trying not to do it myself, right? There's nothing like, you get a few drinks in you and everything's about me and I just want to be impulsive, right? And I want to go with my instinct and I stop watching other people for their signals and I stop caring about what their signals are because me. Like, it's just, I've worked so hard to try not to be that guy. So a bar is an amazing fish tank, if you will, for versions of all this stuff, aggressive, beta male, whatever type of stuff included. And in my opinion, when it comes to actually applying much of this stuff, especially boundary stuff, it starts with an honest inquiry and, thinking that you're not necessarily better than that, So
Right.
I've been aggressive often enough to know that even if I believe that I'm doing something for my status or whatever, even if I have some sort of an altruistic motive, I can scare people. And
Yes.
it feels effing awesome.
Oh, yeah, it's power.
Oh, my goodness.
Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, this is where,
I'm not better than that.
but here's a question. Is it power or is it force?
There's a difference?
Yeah. And that really is a critical starting point with this. I mean, what is power? Ask yourself that. Come up with your definition. And then, now that you've done that, now listen to the different answers.
Yeah. I'm going to sidestep this one because we've talked about it too many times.
Okay.
So, I would say at some basic point, before we've had all these conversations, I would have defined power as something along the lines of reach, influence, independence, and the ability to get results.
Okay. You wanna?
No, that
Yeah. Again,
that pretty
this
much sums it up.
Yeah.
I mean,
most people's definition of power is me telling people what to do. Right. I have the authority. Go do this. Right.
That's another from the great Chinese philosopher Cartman.
Yeah.
but that
Yeah.
only works
Do not
if they
question
actually
my authority.
do what you tell them to
Well,
do.
number one, but number two, if you, my definition of power is influence, long-term, ongoing influence. You get that through trust, and a lot of people don't understand this. So what they try and do is they use the beta version of power. Do what I say, or I'll hurt you. That's just wrong way. And there's also again, we were talking about boundaries and getting what you want. People can try and bully you past, or they can try and get what they want through manipulating you. And that's another, people as you get older are way less likely to try and bully you, but a lot of times what they'll do is they'll try and to manipulate you through your feelings.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's, enforcing your boundaries comes from multiple directions. But once again, we need to get back to the idea of boundaries are layered.
Yeah. Oh, so that's especially because most people in a bar are between 20 and 40. Mm-hmm. You can see that really interesting transition from the hard skills to the soft skills on display in a lot of areas. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. One of the things that has happened to me as I've gotten older is I fundamentally don't care how physically attractive you are if you're boring. Mm-hmm. Right? That took a while.
Right. Yeah.
I'm not a great person.
No, it's okay.
But it's really interesting to watch women hit that boundary, right? And also figure out ways around it, or the really, really talented ones figure out how to blend them.
Right.
Right? Like they'll make you feel insecure and also be interested in your attention.
Right.
I'd say it's very
Right.
interesting.
Well, see, one of the things, we are social primates. We're individuals, so we're not like a beehive, but we're individuals who are in a tribe. And what we are really concerned about is our status in the tribe. Mm-hmm. Now, again, we talked last time about status and responsibility. But a lot of people, when they come into this, they will try and gain a foothold in your head. Right?
Yeah.
One of the things that, given my background, is, I've done bad things. I've done, things that were required. But one of the things that I'll see as a strategy is people who try and guilt trip me into being a better person. They'll give me a chance to be a better person by letting them do what they want.
this is sort of the shadow version of something that is really actually fantastic from Dale Carnegie, right? Give the other person a reputation to live up to. I do this all the time with my siblings, and I have been delighted to see seeds that I've been able to plant.
And now the secret's out.
Well, not necessarily. I'm kind of a cold-hearted, manipulative bastard. But, well, at least I have the capacity to be. I usually don't. But one of the benefits of that, if you're not using it to, manipulate people for your own interests, is being able to do that, right? To plant the seed and to eventually at some point hear wisdom that I've been given from other people like yourself, right? That I've given to them come back through their own filter to me at a later point in time. It's really interesting.
It's cool.
Yeah.
But see, that requires a relationship.
And it requires trust.
Right.
And me not
Trust.
shitting on their feelings every
Right.
time they've come to me
Right.
with a problem.
Now, here's where we're running into kind of a weird issue. Humans are tribal by nature. When I say we're social primates, we have our tribe, we have our clan, we have our family.
When you say tribe, do you mean my tribe or your tribe? Oh,
There's a lot of overlap. But
do you know the German for this?
what?
This is one of my favorite things from a sociology class I took a long time ago. Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft. Your people and my people. It's a very natural thing.
Yes, it is. It's ingrained because the thing is that we have our focus on our tribe. These are our people. We put them first. And it's concentric circles. Right? But, my loyalty is to my clan, right? My people, my family. Now, the fact of the matter is that we have been socially conditioned to think of an uber tribe.
Yeah.
That we are part of, that we owe social responsibility. And the thing is, that doesn't really work for most people. Because Dunbar's number is that we can only maintain between 100 and 250 stable relationships. Those are our people. Okay. That's where our primary, right. Then we can expand it into a bigger picture like our social class or, our ethnicity, et cetera, or our religion, but basically it's...
Well, you have
what?
micro tribes, would you call it? Not, or how would you describe
You got
that?
a lot of overlapping, but one of the things that is a big issue, and this ties into boundaries, is we have been told that we are part of an Uber tribe.
You've been invited to Uber Tribe. Dan LaGrasso likes this.
Yeah. But the thing is, and I mean, this is really stressful for like young girls, because, if we are only supposed to have this number of people that, our status is really important to, all of a sudden, especially with advertising, we have, young girls that are on constant display for everybody. 300 million people you have to impress.
It's bigger than that.
I know.
Because it's not just...
I know, it's but that's just the idea of you have to present all these people, most of whom you'll never see again. Or you'll never meet them.
Well, and it's fitting into a mold.
Correct.
Right.
Which is also not sustainable.
How do you have boundaries?
Consistent.
Yeah, how do you have boundaries for 360 million people?
That touches on something really interesting for me, because fundamentally the number one piece of advice I end up giving to people going through a hard time is you're not special and everybody goes through this. So don't act like you're an exception.
Well, and
or
more
like
than,
there's not
but
other
see,
people.
here's where we also here's where we also get into a thing of, if I have it's always a balance between the individual and the group. If we have overemphasized the individual, it's all about me. Okay, we fail to learn how to function in a group. Okay, one of the points of, how many people know how to maintain a functional relationship over decades? Right. Look at the divorce rate.
Yeah.
right? I didn't get married until I was at a point where until death do you part was like, I'm in it for that long run. Okay. But see, how many people make selfish decisions because they can?
I'm not making a self decision. I'm just living my best life.
Yeah, exactly. But here's where
Your
we
face.
don't shoot him.
Oh my God.
I'm afraid that there's only water in this cup.
Okay. But this is what we're talking about when, part of the thing is we're designed to interface. And in groups, on an ongoing group, we have to establish and maintain boundaries. Okay.
Yeah.
Outside that, outside that group, there you go. That didn't do any good over here.
It was glorious. Take my word for it.
Thank you.
It was too outside.
One of the things that I recently came across a great statement that said, respect is earned, so is disrespect.
Ooh.
Okay, which is incredibly profound. Mm-hmm. And there's always going to be these, well, no, there's going to be some, no, stop. It boils down to, if you're getting disrespected, there's a damn good chance it's based on your behavior.
So let me tie this back into Brian's question, the personal versus cultural distinctions being one element of it. How to phrase this? Is it cynical or accurate to think of transactions, to think of interpersonal pieces like that in a fundamentally transactional way?
There's limits to the idea, but it is important.
Right. Well, but that ties directly into, so that's a transactional idea, though, right? Respect and disrespect being earned.
Well, at the same time, but there's also like an
element.
obligation. Okay. If you were in an established relationship with somebody, part of this is trust, part of it is obligation. Okay. As a mother.
So, yeah, I think it depends on your track record as to how fast you earn either.
There's a credit rating.
Really,
no, that's actually, not a joke. I'm like, that's
you're right. There is.
I am willing to give somebody that I have an invested time, track record with, I'm willing to give more leeway to than somebody that I don't have an economy with.
Right.
Because I know that this over here is not normal. So maybe someone's just having a bad day.
Right.
Versus a very mundane social interaction over here that goes awry. I don't get time for that because I'm not invested.
You don't care about your Uber driver's political opinion.
Number one, but number two, okay. The person's whose opinion I listen to is my wife. Okay, I don't always agree, but there is an obligation because of the commitment that we have. Right, that I will listen to it, and I will. On the other hand, when somebody walks up and feels that they just have to tell me, right, a total stranger walking up, well, I think you should know what I feel. I don't give a. Yeah, that was a bleep.
He's not interested.
Yeah, there's a lack of interest on my part. But the other thing about it is, realistically, when we're talking about boundaries and boundary enforcement, and this is something that, we want to get to, is, as I say, there's all these levels and layers. Now, I'm willing to operate on all these levels, okay, and I will enforce my boundaries at these levels. Personally, if I say, thank you, I'm not interested, right, which, by the way, when you're walking along and somebody does a social script, excuse me, sir, and it's like they're trying to sell me something.
Have you heard of our Lord and Savior, Cthulhu?
Yeah, well, actually, the better one, I picked up from a friend, like, when you're walking along and some, cable person comes up and says, hey, excuse me, who's your cable internet provider? Right? It's like you find a local company, right? And it's like you walk by and go, I work for Dish. Right? And it shuts down the hustle.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a really great, fun trick. But the idea of, they're exploiting a social script for their own purposes. Right. And they're relying on you being polite right, not to respond. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I don't have any problem. Well, not only do I not have problem with being rude, I have no problem throwing somebody through a wall. Okay.
High five.
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing about it is that
that's the whole spectrum of boundaries,
Right.
though, right? There's a lot of this that straight up, I understand why people are uncomfortable because I've worked past that discomfort myself.
Right.
And
that
it takes
really
a lot
is.
of work, but
Right.
like it's
saying thank
gotta
you.
go. It's
Yeah.
gotta cover you entirely.
But see, and this is where when they're
Concentric
trying
circles.
to manipulate a social script by saying, "Excuse me, sir," or "How you doing today?" Right? That's abnormal. That's a stranger walking up and talking to me. Excuse me, I bit myself. Means that he wants something.
Correct.
Right? And it's like, is it worth my time to engage in this? So when I walk by and he's really polite, "Excuse me, sir, who's your carrier?" Dish. Right? I'm done. One and done. You're not going to get what you want. There's no need for this to go on. And that ends the script.
I had a phone call like that the other day. So trying to get a business to sign up for something, and she kept saying, but what about on the phone?
No.
And I wanted to kind of see where this was going, so I didn't shut it down, but I also wasn't giving her what she wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't talking.
Right.
And
See-
I was just like, I've already told you no.
Yeah.
But what about no?
No.
But what about, and I'm like, oh,
What part of no don't you?
You're
Yeah.
persistent.
See, and this is where, again, the social scripts are thank you, not interested. But I have a really important, it's like you've just violated the script.
Right. And I'll throw something in here. A lot of my entree to your work and this project as a whole came from a lot of relatively painful early experiences
Right.
with being bullied and not being in the in crowd, right?
Right.
So if this isn't quite clicking for you, or if it's really clicking for you, maybe think about, so bullying like a bar where people are drinking is another really great obvious microcosm of a lot of these things, like boundary violations, scripts especially. I can't tell you how many times the promise of, oh, hey, we'll say that you're one of the cool kids and we'll be your friends if you do this thing that we're going to laugh at you for, right?
Right.
I'm 10, I'm 11. Like,
Right.
That's what do I
Right.
What,
You
what do I
become
want
the
more
butt
than
of,
that?
yeah.
Nothing.
And that's the thing. They're offering you a humiliation. Right. And similar with this, when people offer you a chance to be a better person. Right. That is like, well, I'm going to give you a chance to tolerate my bad behavior. Excuse me. If we're talking an economy of relationship, and I mean, that's one of those, yeah, people object to it and they say that, but no, for the general rule of thumb, a good economy of relationship, it's back and forth, right? What do I get out of dealing with you?
The illustrious sound of my baritone,
Right.
obviously.
But see, on the other hand, the thing of like, when somebody walks up and wants you to change your behavior, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, it's annoying other people, right? Like I had a friend, he was smoking a cigarette. He was far enough away, and they were waiting for a table. And this kid walked up and goes, "Excuse me, would you put that out if I ask you?" And he said, "No." Right? Which, he's standing over far enough away. This kid came all the way over.
Seeking grievance.
Yeah, seeking
Yeah.
grievance.
Yeah.
Right? And, this is a thing of like, I don't owe you anything.
Yeah.
Right? I am under no obligation. One of the things about respect is earned, disrespect is earned. Courtesy is extended as a good faith effort.
Because it's better when everybody's doing it.
Yeah, it's better. And just out of curiosity, it's like, I don't owe you respect. I don't owe you disrespect. But as a good faith effort, I am going to provide courtesy. Now, if I extend courtesy, if I follow a script, and you violate that script, you just told me the game is on.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where, when I set a boundary, and this is like, I just tried to set a boundary, or I just set a boundary and you're trying to get around it.
I've had some interesting experiences with this in the hospitality industry.
Yes, exactly. And that's the same thing of, that tells me it's time to go into manual.
Right. Yes. No, I've had that exact
Right.
experience. So I don't want to give too many details here just for discretion, but there are a number of times when this place where I'm at, we try to manage expectations and concerns in advance, right?
Right.
One of the hallmarks of great hospitality is anticipation. Accurate anticipation. Maybe
Yes.
is an important qualifier there.
That is a very important qualifier.
So we try to avoid the word no, right? This is not going to be any huge surprise to anyone, right? But if I, who am relatively good at this, right, you come to me with a demand, I expect to be able to do this thing. So we've got some circumstances that are disallowing this thing, but we can solve this problem this way,
Right.
way, or this way.
Right. We have
Which one of those would you
alternatives, yeah.
prefer? Why can't I do it the way that?
There are other
excuse me.
factors involved.
Right.
These are our options that would work.
Right. Well, and how far have I gone out of my way to understand their concern, present alternatives, right? To manage the solution and to make it clear to them that the situation is beyond
Right.
their personal interests
Right.
from go.
Right.
Right.
Now, good. Keep on going. You can
So-
wrap that up.
Yeah. No, it's just really, and again, if that doesn't, 85, 90% of people.
Right. Okay. I can do
okay.
that.
Yeah, that's not
Right.
exactly what I wanted, but I understand that you're making these efforts,
Right.
trying to communicate to me, so on and so forth. I can live with that. Right? That's not a problem.
And when that guy goes, boom. Now, something Jenna and I have talked about. Jenna used to travel for work a lot. And in the hotel world, hotel bars are a meat market. Okay?
Okay. Let's break that down a little bit, because that's not going to make sense to anybody who hasn't spent a long time around this table.
Well, okay.
Yeah, so define that.
Okay.
Why hotel bars? What's a meat market? What the hell does that mean?
Okay, believe it or not, a lot of the, quote, rules that people live by at home are because they don't want it known, right? So they behave along these lines. People on vacation, however, okay, hey, I'm far away from home. There's never going to see these people again, et cetera, et cetera. So the behavior. Now, this came up because...
It's functionally a reduction in consequences.
Right.
Because of social separation.
Right. And, the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of cheating that goes on out on the road. Right. And it usually happens in the hotel bar where you walk in, you look around, there's certain, oh, this person's interested in having an affair. Cool. One night stand gone, one and done. In the science fiction world, there was this, we're at a convention and these guys are hitting on me in the bar. Right? It's like...
How many signals were you sending in the bar?
Right. Now, here's the thing.
Can we let her riff on this? I'm super curious.
This is actually set up.
Right.
Because the thing is, I'm sitting there and it's like, you're in a hotel bar. This is a known meat market. Right? Mm-hmm. And I came back to Jenna and I asked her about this, right? And there was some fascinating thing. And it was like, Jenna, how do you signal you're not there to meet somebody in a hotel bar? Or, excuse me, when you're traveling and you don't want to be in your room, where do you go?
Hotel bar.
Right.
Well, so let's hear about your end of this.
So you sit at a table, not the bar. Because at the bar, you're approachable. When you're at a table, you're less so, right? Mm-hmm. Bring a book. Bring your computer. Don't make eye contact with people. Don't be looking around the room. I mean, there are certain ways to...
You send the signal, not interested.
Well, so give me some of the whys, though.
Well, I don't want people coming up and talking to me.
Right.
I'm not there to socialize. I just don't feel like being in the room, right?
I'm curious at how... So you're in this weird limited circumstance, if I'm understanding this right, where the hotel bar is the most convenient way to get out of your room and, just be in the world a little bit. But it's also this super aggressive place? Or is this weird transitional area? What's that?
How do you explain that?
How many times did people try to do this before you figured out this general rule book?
Okay. If you're in a group.
Yeah, if you're in a group, you're fine.
Right. If you're in a group at a table, you're talking, right? One of the things that shows it's an inclusive group or a closed group. Okay.
And I'll throw this out to guys. I think the reverse engineering side of this is, when do you approach a woman?
Right. And here, this really is.
Or a guy, if you're in.
Right. Are you sending out the messages? Okay. So, hand me the pen, please. No, the
What
pen.
kind of messages?
The pen. Give me the pen.
He's not getting the message.
I know. So, if I'm sitting here doing this at at the table, right, and I've got my drink, etc., and I'm not really looking around, my body language is different than if I'm sitting at the bar, and anytime somebody walks into the bar, I rubberneck. Right?
You're shopping.
Exactly. That is the message, which is, number one, you can sit there alone, but you send the messages out of, I'm working.
Right.
I'm not here socializing. I'm not picking up.
Right.
One of the things is you don't make eye contact. Right. Mm-hmm. Which is like, I can sit here and I can glance up, see somebody coming in. I don't need to look them in the eye.
Right.
Right.
There are degrees.
Yeah, there are degrees. And so basically you send these messages out that tend to shut down, that, kind of hang the sign, not open for business. Mm-hmm. Okay. But understand that when you're in that environment, you have to broadcast those.
Right. And this brings us to a really interesting friction point, which is kind of the crux of Brian's question, right? So, not only what are boundaries when it comes to how do I do the thing, when do I do the thing, and to what degree do I do the thing. So, you're doing all these things to discourage the signals. What happens when somebody, hey babies, you...
Yeah, it does it anyway.
Despite that.
Yeah.
Right.
Today or 20 years ago?
Well, no.
Either. Actually, maybe both. Specifically.
Well, hang on a
comparison.
second. Here's where, again, people sitting in the bar, right, understand going into the bar, there's a likelihood this is going to happen.
Right.
Okay, you have chosen to walk into a meat market.
Right.
Okay, you could be sitting out in the lobby working on your computer.
Yeah.
Okay, but you are in a place.
Yeah, but they didn't have good snacks in the lobby.
I'm okay with that. But see, here's the thing. First step is accept that you're in a bar, and accept that people, even if you send every signal out,
don't expect the environment to change
because of you.
You're
Yes.
still going to have to manage your boundaries.
Exactly. And now, so
continually manage your boundaries.
right. So can we hear from
now?
those? Yeah.
Yeah. Now that you're in a place, and somebody ignores all the signals.
I'm sorry, I'm not interested. Just tell them you have to be direct.
Now or 20 years ago? Either?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so actually,
Sorry, I'm working.
Yeah, we should, I guess we should be clear, this is descriptive, not prescriptive, right? So,
Yeah.
an example of how things are applied, not the way you apply it every time.
Just being direct. Can I buy you a drink? No, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. No, I'm working.
Yeah.
I don't know. You got any particular standout examples or memories from those days?
Old guys.
Aha.
Old guys love to buy me drinks. And they wouldn't ask first.
Oh, they send you a drink?
And then, across the bar or across the room or whatever. And then, you can't take the drink because then they're going to come up and talk to you.
Yeah, this gentleman bought you a drink. Send it back.
I learned that the hard way.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
So just, send it back with a plate. Thanks, but no thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm waiting for a friend. Or just something, right?
Sorry,
Even if
I'm
you're
working.
not waiting for a friend.
See, now here's where...
So that's really interesting to break that down. So that's includes manners, right?
Yes.
It's not a FU, right? It's a no thanks.
Yeah.
You're including a surface explanation, right? So there's some built-in consideration of their interests.
Yes.
In the rejection.
Because you don't
really interesting.
Well, because you don't want to have a confrontation. If you don't want to accept the drink and have a conversation with them, then you surely don't want to tell them why.
Because
but even
sometimes
then,
men are fragile, and just saying no is going to be perceived as a drink to the face.
Right. Well, no.
Egos.
Here's the thing, and there is a degree of, going back to the dish. Right. Thank you, I'm not interested. I work for Dish. See, there is a degree of, saying no and giving a reasonable answer. So, thank you, no, I'm working.
So being able to explain this to people instead of just saying, well, then you shouldn't be going to the bar by yourself.
Right.
Is extremely important.
Right. See, but this is the thing of if you're sitting in a bar, you expect to have to back it up.
Yes, but if
And
you're going to
don't
go
get
into a bar alone, you need to have these skills.
Right. See, and that right there is a big issue of, yes, you need to, starting with the fact that you're going to have to, there's a good chance in that environment, because of the nature of the environment, you're going to have to manually, shift gears and defend it. And I mean,
that's this whole question in a nutshell, right? Like, Brian's
yeah.
like, hey, I understand that I need these skills.
Right.
But in what context?
Right.
How? Thanks a lot, Brian.
Yes.
So actually, I do have a really funny bar story. That's
Yes,
appropriate.
let's go.
So I used to frequent a bar because it was just convenient, and I had friends there. Well, it turns out one of the old guys did buy me a drink, but it was completely on the level. He was just a nice old guy, and we just would sit and have conversations. One night I went to the bar having a drink with my friend. I was in my 20s. I was young. He was old. And one of my parents' friends that I had known my entire life was sitting with the guy having a drink with him. And I'm like, what are you doing here? She's like, how do you know him? And I'm like, how do you know him? And she's like, he's my brother. And so it could have been like
awkward.
But we were just like, conversing, like having actual like adult conversation, and there was no, out of boundary anything going on. It was a brother of a family friend that I had known my whole life. How it weird.
Yeah. Well, and it's worth commenting here how often, and this is just me. This is not a safety concepts thing, but in my personal opinion, there's a quote my dad loves from Middlemarch by, I forget the author, Eliot something. Anyway, the basic idea is that a lot of people live their lives not like the roaring river, but as one of the small tributaries that feed the river, right? So the basic idea there being sort of a Zen thing where everything we do, every decision we make feeds into the greater stream of life. And in my personal opinion, every time you put your selfish interests over a thing, you ruin altruism for the rest of us, right? Like how many horny dudes have killed the ability for somebody to just, be random and nice and do a nice thing.
Well, see,
and be polite and get to know somebody.
Hold on. Here's where we run into, again, shifting gears.
Yeah.
The taking it out of manual. One of the problems, and this is where I find it, people who say, oh no, if you're polite, people will take it as a sign of weakness. Okay. Once again, if I believe that all I have to be is polite, if I'm in auto, I'm driving along in automatic, right? If I say no, I expect it to be done, and that's all I have to do. Right? So I say no, and then I was like,
that would be nice.
Wait, he pushed it. I'm offended now. Right? No. You said no. You followed the script.
Yeah.
He still wants it. He's pushing shift into manual. Okay.
That's why sending a drink back with a polite explanation and a thank you, but
thank
no
you,
thank you is important because
right. But see, at the same time,
there's a hard to articulate thing here about part of manners and finesse being accepting somebody's script. as part of their offering and then extending it and redirecting it.
Yes, that is giving the people a face-saving exit
Yes.
until he doesn't take it,
Yes.
right? And this is where...
And that might be the distinction between somebody on a different page than you
Right.
and a predatory...
Well, but even predatory, it's like, hey, if I keep on pushing, I'll get it. You know, the people have learned that they can get away with this.
Yeah.
Because most people don't know how to enforce their boundaries.
Yes. Yep.
And this is where...
I feel like you have something.
Yeah.
No, I
No?
was just
Women-
vehemently agreeing.
Women
with that
really have
second.
this issue because, you know, again,
Well, women are predisposed to this because they don't want to be rude.
but part of the reason about not being rude is
like we
not
could do a whole
knowing
podcast
how...
Yeah,
with you
we-
ranting on that.
There. Part of not being rude is like they're told that they're being polite, but the thing is they're relying on the social script to set their boundaries.
Yes.
So if they follow it and this guy doesn't, it's like, well, I can't be rude, but
Well,
at the
because
same
they
time,
don't have anything to draw from in that
Exactly.
situation because it's foreign.
it's either polite or bitch. There's no
Well,
in
yeah.
between. Well, no, there's no in
I
between.
know. Trust me, I know.
Yeah, but they need to hear that.
Trust me, I know.
Yeah. So, you know, the thing is, you can enforce your boundaries without being an asshole. Right?
Until it's time to be an asshole.
Yeah,
and
If it's time to be an asshole.
there's
Right.
a time.
Yeah, there is a time, excuse me, there's a time to shoot somebody. Okay.
That seems like an asshole-ish thing to do. I feel like that.
Another day at work. The thing about it is, when you talk about all these levels, and this is where, you know, we've referenced the levels, but I want to get back, I want to give you guys something to understand this. A core concept is the difference between personal space and shared space. And you cannot understand levels until you understand these simple concepts.
Go.
Okay. Now, think of personal space as your house and property. Now, this is no homeowners association, no family. This is your house alone. This is your property. Okay. This is just ease of explanation to start with. You have your house, you have the street, and then your neighbor's house. Okay. That's your house is your personal property. Your neighbor's house is his personal property. Okay. The street, well, excuse me, before personal property, you keep your house however you want it. Okay. Inside and out, this is all yours. The street is shared space. Okay. Nobody owns the street. Okay. You cannot control the traffic. You cannot control people walking by. Your boundaries are your property line. Okay. This goes back to what Brian was asking about the cultural thing. The street is social, you know, that is where the society, the culture, etc., that has a different set of rules that when you're out there, you have to follow those rules. Okay, but when you're on your space, that's fine. Now, here's, you know, simple concept. People who say, I don't understand, you know, people always cross my boundaries, etc., etc. Well, people who don't understand boundaries also don't understand other people's boundaries. Okay? This is where we start getting into some real... This is why the analogy of, you know, your property...
I might be colored by my bullying experiences early in life, but do they really not understand? Or are they making internal justifications?
Yes.
Maybe it doesn't matter. I mean, there's a degree.
Well,
there's
on
a
my
degree
end,
of
managing it doesn't
yeah,
matter.
right. So there's a degree of they care, they know, but they don't care,
Well,
or they don't know at all. But either way is
at the same time...
and this is,
Yeah.
and I asked this not out of interest in correcting other people, but again, as I mentioned earlier, every one of us exists on both sides of this thing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, in what instances when I've been, you know, the boundary violator one way or another, you know, have I been making a rationalization, and when have I not understood?
And the answer is yes. It is. This is where it gets complicated. Okay, one of the problems that people will have...
Pause real quick. It's so complicated. Thanks a lot, Brian.
Yeah, Brian, we blame you, you know.
Way to go.
Yeah, thanks, guy. There are people who will stand in the middle of the street and claim that traffic is violating their boundaries.
Who made you walk out there, though?
Yeah, see, but they don't understand. This
There's
is why,
sidewalks.
yeah, but this is the very core concept of if you don't know where your boundaries are, you don't know when you're crossing other people's boundaries.
And
Yeah.
how can you expect people to respect them if you don't know where they are?
Number one. And number two, is it realistic?
Man,
Okay.
the whole idea of your self-conduct being very clear shorthand for other people to interact with you is its own whole rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But let's underscore that, right? The way I behave and the way I interact with other people is in and of itself a clear and shining beacon for how you are allowed to interact with me.
We reap
Yeah.
what we sow.
And, okay,
More than that, it's like especially if I do what I do consciously, right? Or actually, no matter what I do, whether it's conscious or not, I'm giving you essentially a little profile of what I'm comfortable with and how I care to interact with
Right.
folks, right?
yes. Now, here's the thing. Let's
is
go
why
back to
this
this
is really
the
important.
cigarette smoking.
Yeah.
Now, I am not in a place right now where if I say, I feel like having a cigar, I'm not going to fire it up.
So hypothetically, even if you're outside and some of the cigar blows inside, it's also a problem.
Well, but see,
Hypothetically.
here's the thing of, I'm not in my home,
Exactly.
right? I don't smoke in my home because I share my home with my wife, who is not a cigar fan, especially in the house. But, when I'm talking about going outside and smoking a cigar, if I'm in a public place, I've withdrawn not to offend people, and somebody decides, like with my friend, to come over from where he is, to come over and tell my friend to put out a cigarette,
Yeah.
right? It's like, Junior, no, right? But people, well, the smoke is bothering me. Guess what? You're in a public place. You can move.
Yeah.
It's not incumbent. My friend took reasonable steps
Yeah.
to withdraw, but this guy felt it, his right. And I mean, this is like,
he was not under the impression. So I'll use a very physical example for this, but it stratifies really well. I don't like that type of person because their internal paradigm on the world is that they have around themselves this bubble, this boundary that travels with them,
Yes.
not that they are
Traveling.
a point traveling across other bubbles.
right.
Right?
Okay,
Right.
I can sum that up with one word.
Go for it.
Entitlement.
I don't understand. Seriously,
Hit
though.
him.
I do,
Yeah.
but not everybody
Right.
does. So
No.
let's break that
So,
out.
because you don't want somebody smoking within however many feet of you, you're entitled to go tell them to stop that behavior in a public place.
Okay, so what I want to make sure that this gets back to building bridges, right? So if that offends you because you've done that, right? You've been the person asking about the cigarette, right? It's super likely, given the state of culture, education, blah, 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 right? That's something you were given, not something you found on your own, in my opinion.
Okay. I'm
Right.
take it a step further.
So a step further would be, why is my expectation wrong? If I'm that person, I think.
Which ties back to
Yes.
personal and shared space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shared space is space that we interact with others. Okay, because
And there's a huge unstated thing here about public space not being homogenous.
well, wait. There's more.
But wait.
There's more.
There always
Yeah.
is.
No, I mean, one of the things, if you've ever seen a picture of somebody melting or a video of somebody melting down in a public place, quote, public place, right? The one that is particularly obnoxious is to watch somebody screaming and howling in a restaurant or a food place, right? And when they claim this is a public place, no, actually that is a private business that allows public access.
There's actually, I have a big pet peeve here with people who want a diversity of opinion on university campuses, but don't understand that that's a thing to be encouraged, not legislated.
Right. Now, along these lines, there are true public places.
Yeah.
A park, right? If I'm walking through a park smoking a cigar,
Even a sidewalk.
yeah, okay, sidewalk, it doesn't, the thing is, a person who one of the problems that happens so often, parents, you're going to recognize this, is when somebody who has a personal space, let's say that's your room, okay, how you keep your room is your business unless it infringes into the public space, into the shared space.
If I'm renting a room from someone and I smoke in there,
Mm-hmm.
even if it doesn't leak out into the rest of the house, I'm devaluing
Right.
the property.
Well, but here's the thing, that when you're talking about one of the bigger problems is that people treat shared space as personal space.
11-year-old children.
Right. The thing is, I did the intro of this is your property, but there's a lot more layers involved in this. But basically, somebody comes into shared space, makes a mess, and then walks away.
The word Legos popped into my mind like
Yeah,
it was
I
in
know.
neon.
Yeah.
No, actually, it's Nerf darts.
Yeah, Nerf
Excuse
darts.
me.
But see, the thing about it is, it's
And
like, yeah, but this is my
shoes
house.
and skates.
I live here. And it's like, yeah, but even, shared space, if it is owned, has to be negotiated.
It's not I live here, it's I also live here.
Correct.
Right.
But, you'll find treatment of shared space as personal space. Like, I can make a mess expecting somebody else to clean up. Okay. That triggers your parent, I can tell.
Tell me more.
Yeah. That
Hey,
triggers.
Mom, if you're watching this, if you just stop for a while, we'd all understand and start picking up after ourselves.
Yeah. See, and this is where,
Love us too much. Cut it out.
well, again, preparing kids
Yeah.
is very much suck it up, buttercup. You have to learn how to share space with others. Right.
The best term I've ever heard for this is from Stephen Brown, mutual friend, who just crushed it talking about how he met a guy who had a totally different life experience in a foreign country, and they immediately got along and were able to swap stories because they understood the way of places that are not their own.
Yes. And that, that's the
Magnificent.
thing.
Traveling highlights it, and it's really obvious all of a sudden because literally no one that I've ever seen, actually maybe not, because this is the ugly American idea, right? We go places and we get annoyed that they don't act like America does, right? And we impose our values on their culture, right? That's the idea of the ugly American.
Yeah, that's the theory.
But in practice, I almost never see somebody go to a foreign country, foreign restaurant, whatever, and not adjust themselves to the situation. And yet, when we're where we live, it's like we forgot how.
Yes. Now, add to that, I have a friend who was a travel agent, right? And the thing about it is, the ugly American is by and large a myth. Okay? There were certain ethnic groups and nationalities that
I feel
would
like
show
I've
up.
got some friends who are not attractive. I don't know.
Well, no, I'm talking about like when a group of Russian tourists were leaving a hotel, vehicles pulled in, blocked the bus, right? And this is, pre-Soviet Union falling apart. They blocked the bus, they searched the bus, and were pulling out all the things that had been ripped off. Okay. Which is actually when, survival communism was a reality. But, the thing is, again, Americans were fond, the ugly American. The ugly American is actually more common in our own country. Okay. One of the things that we used to deal with is I grew up in an area with various gangs, and you knew this was these guys' turf, this was these guys' turf. When you moved into somebody else's turf, you were a guest. Okay, you were passing through. But, the same thing, when people get into trouble, they think, I'm here, I'm at home, I can go into this biker bar and do whatever I want.
That's really heartbreaking for me, because one of the thesis statements here is we all naturally have an aptitude for this if we try.
If we pay attention, yes.
But we often don't try.
Right, and that really is. And, one of the things that we walk into this area, again, understanding personal and shared space.
Yeah, let's have you break this down one more time, and then.
Okay, personal space is yours. Okay, you own it. Shared space is an area that other people need to come into to get what they want or what they need. Now, one thing that I was talking about was layers within personal space.
And it's the transition where it breaks down?
Well, hold on. Boundaries. This is critical to understanding boundaries. Mm-hmm. Okay. Boundaries are like onions. There are levels of them. And people think, I set my boundaries and that's all. It's not one and done. Okay. There are series, even within your personal space, there are levels of boundaries. For example, how do you approach, property? Mm-hmm. Okay. If you have to go on somebody's property, how do you do it?
Front door.
Okay. You walk up the walkway or the driveway, right?
Whatever designated.
Yes. There is an acceptable approach that you come up with that is tolerated.
That is designed by the person living there.
That is designed, but is also socially understood. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, there's exceptions to this. Mm-hmm. Okay. But generally idea of if somebody comes walking up the driveway, that is the acceptable thing. These are the boundaries, all right? On the other hand, somebody's cutting across your yard.
Jumping the fence.
Right. Well, on the other hand, there's certain times that we allow for this. Okay. Now, we're out in the middle of boonies. Mm-hmm. But, one of the things that somebody cutting across the yard, the front yard where I grew up, mm-hmm. was pretty well tolerated if the guy was wearing a mailman's uniform.
Yeah. It does.
Okay.
Exceptions, rules.
There's exceptions,
Normal,
rules. But, right. The thing about it is you allow for these boundaries, and yet, if you find somebody in your backyard,
tells you a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Now, what are the exceptions?
If you have to find them, they were trying not to be found.
Well, no, more along, you see a guy walking out in the backyard, mm-hmm. right? He better be in a uniform.
Yeah.
Okay. On the other hand, where are my boundaries of dude, what's going on? I'm not going to shoot you yet.
But I need an answer.
yeah, we're going to start doing this dance. These are where the boundaries are. And I'm going to be a little more adamant about this guy. Yeah. What are you doing here?
Right.
Okay. State your name. State your quest.
Hi, can I help you?
Blue.
Right.
No. Yellow.
Yeah. But here's also... the boundaries, that's where different boundaries are and different levels. I don't shoot somebody for crossing my property line.
But they get interrogated.
Well, they're going to encounter,
yeah,
what's going on. Now, same thing going into somebody's house, mm-hmm. right? There are different rules inside and outside the door. Mm-hmm. Okay. When I am a guest in somebody's house, there are certain areas that I don't go. Back in the day, when I was single, I'd bring home young ladies, and we'd go into the private bedroom. That was a one-time access deal, right? So again, even from all these levels, you get different rules. Okay, I didn't. Even if I'd gone to bed with somebody, that didn't mean 2 weeks later she could come into my house.
That's really interesting.
Okay.
And obvious, but also really interesting.
Right. But on the other hand, I'm married now. Okay. My definition of shared space, even my personal space, is shared space. Okay. One of the things about doing this is, I have my side, she has her side of the bed. Okay. This is when you look at it and you realize with all these different levels, each of them needs a different set of boundaries negotiated. Same. Now, let's add in time here. One of the problems is that if you start setting boundaries out at your property line, okay, that establishes a consistent pattern of boundaries. Whereas a lot of people, what they'll do is that they'll wait until the person is in the bedroom before they're like, "You're not respecting my boundaries." You haven't.
Well, there's more to that too. So the further out you can start setting the boundaries, the less you have to set.
Fewer.
Fewer, but
That's not. It's not.
the less you
entirely-
have to enforce.
Yes. Yeah, it's not the less amount of boundary, the fewer amount of boundaries. It's this is why I have an editor.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
You can use less force.
correct. I can, if I do it early, I don't.
Yeah.
You have more options on the table
Right.
if you do it early.
See, that once again, when you look at it from this, when I can operate on all these levels and I'm willing to go at all these levels, the problem is most people will stay here and it's like, but I can't do that.
That's really
Or
interesting.
they'll try to jump from here to here.
Right.
Yeah, so having been a lot of my formative experiences being bullying with this stuff anyway, one of the things that stresses me out the most is when there are other social conditions that prevent me in my feelings from protecting myself like I normally would. We had an incident at work where a young kid who was also working too many hours that day and was frustrated like I was picked a weird fight with me and talked to me in a way that I don't allow people to talk to me, right? But we're at work. There's a whole office watching.
Right.
A lot of the guys are even older than me and have a more patient mentality, whether or not that's the correct mentality.
Well, now hang on a second.
Right.
Let's talk about this because work is a shared space.
Yeah. So I put my priorities aside, understanding that even if they accomplished the goals that I wanted at that moment in time, there were going to be some secondary and tertiary effects
Yes.
to my or the way I'm perceived, rather.
Right.
Right?
See, so this is one of those things when you look at the idea of layers.
Stupid kid.
Right. Well, I know, but when you're looking at it from layers and trying to keep the runway in front, which is a term I use, pilot coming down through the clouds, he just talked through the tower and he suddenly comes out of the clouds and realizes he's halfway down the runway. So he veers up and the tower says, "Why did you veer off?" He goes, "I like having the runway in front."
Yeah.
Right. Now, the problem is people are so reliant on social scripts that they allow the runway to run down here, and then they feel they have to overreact.
That's interesting.
Right. Well, I'm afraid I don't want to have conflict. Well, no, if you handle it early enough, you won't have conflict.
Right. It's overcompensation.
Right. Now, the other thing.
It's also a good way for you to track somebody
Right.
as you both go down and maybe they're listening.
Yeah.
You know,
Look,
maybe
I set a
not
boundary
listening.
and you're trying to get around it.
Oh,
This tells me a lot. But once again, when you can manually take over,
right.
right, which is, I have no problem, as you said, when somebody sent you a drink that you didn't ask for, what message did you send back?
No, thank you.
And
I mean, that was a nice gesture, but I'm just no.
thank you for the gesture, but no thank you, I'm busy. Okay. See, so once you set these boundaries and somebody still tries to get around them, no matter what strategy they're using,
Ping.
I'm in the manual.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not upset about it. I'm not, look, I expect people to try.
Yeah, and that's a weird intersection there, right? Like, this is a better question for you than I think either of us. What I have my own feelings on how often I presume So I try to never act like somebody's intent is malicious, just because I've found that to not be useful 90% of the time. But having been out there in the world with people trying to push that interest on their part, right? Like where's that at for you? In terms of how you react to a thing?
Yeah. I try to give the benefit of the doubt until I have evidence to the contrary. Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about the same people always pushing the same button over and over, and you're trying to set and maintain that boundary, and it's totally disregarded every single time, that tells me a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you set a boundary and somebody crosses it and you say, hey, whoa, did you not see what just happened there? Or, I'm not comfortable with this.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize I was coming across that way, or that you took my point that way or something. And they're genuinely sorry.
Well, so straight up, we've been through this a couple times, right?
Right.
On a couple areas, you've been like, whoa, no. And I've been like, oh, God, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one of them would have to do with a coffee incident.
Yes, it does.
But, mess with my coffee.
No.
There was a joke we made off camera earlier. One of the things Jenna never errs on the side of caution with is, like, I have never once in my entire history with her been confused as to whether or not I had crossed a boundary. It was always very obvious to me.
Right.
So, and it's funny because I'm
amends.
not always comfortable. That was what we were
Right.
saying. So I said, I'm not comfortable setting boundaries a lot of the time. And Dan's like, really?
You do it anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, the thing about it is, comfort is, again, if you're willing to go to these different levels, right? Scaling force.
Yeah.
Ask, tell, order,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Enforce. Okay.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you have a roadmap on doing this, it's not as scary.
Well, and there's an element of giving yourself permission to do this as well.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Well,
And let's not neglect that. If you aren't used to this, if this is generally speaking news to you, not to live, because we all do that, but to hear out loud, you are allowed to do, and you have to actively give yourself permission at some point in time to everything from, no thanks, I'm not down for that, to you do a single degree more of whatever you're doing, and I'm going to put a bullet in you. Mm-hmm. It's got to run that whole gamut, or you're not fully responsible for your own protection.
And yet, at the same time, you also have to have clear standards on all of these.
And I want to be clear real quick here that we're not glorifying... one of the issues that I think we all have with what I call the ninjas and Navy SEALs
eye roll
direction of the larger self-defense market is the glorification of the extremes.
Number one, and number two, that all this other stuff doesn't really matter. I've already addressed that. Now, how do we do the extremes? Right? And I mean,
there's a name for that trope, and it's called hand-wavium.
Yeah. We teach situational awareness. Yeah, we teach. Yeah.
All right, that's enough.
I know. Sorry, Pat.
But the whole point is, if you're pretty good at this stuff, you might not need that.
Right, and I mean, this is the whole thing.
We
and
don't
by the
want
time
you to get into a gunfight.
And by the time you finally get to the point of where it does go down, okay, there's no doubt.
Yeah.
See, it's like
That's
I have
real.
tried everything in my power to avoid it, but you're insisting this going down. Mm-hmm. Right? And that's a mindset that...
Your behavior is saying otherwise.
Right. And I mean, that's the thing of don't expect sympathy for your screaming. You know?
I remember that bouncing. There were a number of times where I remember consciously reminding myself, like, we're like 2 steps away from you getting choked out at best. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I really don't want to.
Yeah.
I really want to do
right
everything. Well, so, and from the outside here, right, one of the coolest repeated lessons that I have learned from legitimate badasses that other people would put on a pedestal, blah, blah, blah. If you really listen to these guys, most of the complaints come down to, like, oh, God, this old injury in this weather, this pressure system moving in.
Thanks for the reminder.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
some combination of like, I really wish this or that individual didn't push it there.
Right.
Right.
I don't want to have to go.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to
Well,
go.
and-
No, a
and-
number
and
of
this stuff
times
is
it's
not-
like,
is not
don't
pleasant.
make me have
There's
to do
long-term
this.
consequences. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, even if you're totally in the right.
It sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, well, really, a lot of times that people who have, again, learned to push the boundaries, learned to throw temper tantrums, expecting other people not to go to this level. See, they're
Because that's their trump card. That's
that
their
is
bluff card.
that
or whatever,
that
right?
is their yeah. And it's like, I'll meet you on whatever level. I'm not afraid to. I don't wanna. There's a difference between I don't want to versus I'm afraid to.
And let's be real, there are long-term physical, emotional consequences.
Yes.
This is not. We're talking about it because we talk about it a lot. That's why we're relatively calm here. When you dig into the meat and potatoes of these experiences, there's a lot of deeply
Right.
ingrained stuff to keep you from going there.
Yeah, and I prefer not to, but if you insist, okay.
Yeah.
See, and this is where, again, people, they stop at their comfort zone with their boundaries.
Yeah.
And that is what allows people to push the boundaries, right? Starting with, well, I shouldn't have to enforce my, yes, you do. Just deal with the manual transmission.
Drew Anderson, he does ultra marathons sometimes because I don't know why.
Because he can.
His kid asked him. He posted a picture of himself in the middle of an ultra marathon looking miserable, and his kid was like, "Dad, why?" Basically, right? And he's like, "It's mostly about the suffering." Right?
Yeah.
There's a Dave Draper quote, powerlifting guy. Well, strength guy. I don't know if he's powerlifting specifically, but neither here nor there. He was asked a really big life philosophy level question about why he continues to lift weights, and his answer was, "It's something about the struggle."
Yeah. And that, if you're for that, but a lot of people don't want that struggle.
Well,
Right? It's convenient. And I mean, this is where, like, women have trouble with, wait, I just asked. I should be able to get this. I shouldn't have to struggle.
But the thesis
About the boundaries, which is like, I said, no, why is he still hitting on me?
The thesis, though, right, is that the struggle is worth it.
Yes.
You really dislike conflict, right? Like cringy levels of you don't want, but you do. Why?
Because it's better than not.
Yeah.
But why? So, like, let's say you're talking to younger you before you made that decision to do it anyway, despite the discomfort. What would you say?
I can't imagine where I would be if I didn't, because it would be a whole lot worse.
Huh.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Keep going.
No, it drags up a lot of stuff for me. So
Yeah. No, you
That's
got to do
totally
it.
fair.
It's like changing diapers. Okay. When you got a kid,
Oh, not your own. Sorry. Okay.
yeah, it's your job. It comes down to it's your responsibility. You got to do it. You may not like it,
Yeah.
but get over it. It needs to be done.
and the alternative is worse.
Yeah. And that's the thing of
I don't run marathons.
A line of poop following your kid around.
I
the
don't
Yeah.
run to the mailbox because that's not pleasant for me.
Right.
But that is not going to set me up to fail somewhere else because I haven't managed what's important to me.
yeah.
Right. So I guess one of the thesis statements we can boil down to is, regardless of personal versus cultural boundaries, negotiable versus non-negotiable boundaries, one of the bottom lines here is when it's important, you have to be able to recognize it and do it no matter how uncomfortable it is. Is that
how
accurate?
much? Yes, and how much of our discomfort comes from not knowing? Okay, for example, the person who's standing in the middle of the road saying traffic is infringing on my space. No, idiot, get out of the goddamn road.
Yeah.
Right? Versus you wake up and somebody's standing in your bedroom.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's not in a happy, fun way.
Yeah.
Okay, this is not a time to say, excuse me, what are you doing here? No, this is, this is a situation that's gone way beyond the soft boundaries.
You need a fur missile.
A fur missile?
A fur missile.
Yeah, a little wind up. Yeah, well, see, you have a puppy dog, I have me. Dog is friendly, beware the owner. But see, this is part of recognizing when something has gone to the point of this isn't about boundaries anymore. It's not going to happen.
Right.
So to me, that's the best thing about setting and maintaining boundaries.
You don't have to.
It's the first indicator of alarm bells.
Yes, and once you've got that, all these different levels, and once you know these levels, when something happens, say here, okay, this, we're past
It's off
this.
the table.
Yeah, we're past this. Okay, this is the level, right? And people are like, well, I don't know about that. And it's like, look, if you don't know about that, right? I'm going to do everything I can to avoid shooting this guy, right? Versus I wake up and this guy's in my room. Okay, I'm not going to worry about all this other stuff.
Okay, so let's try to condense that. So in practice, this is not only about understanding boundaries. Actually, I'm going to pause here real quick. Thanks a lot, Brian.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's this whole space here where the fundamental skill is awareness, right? We talk about this so often. You empower so many other things about your decision making by finding a conscious awareness of these unconscious processes.
It's also, yes,
we've got really good instincts
and knowledge.
for this. Yeah.
Right, which is, guess what? If I know personal space and shared space, okay, I wake up and somebody's in my bedroom, I'm pretty, I've got this down to a fine art of like...
And don't discount experience.
Right.
Right.
See, so it isn't just awareness, although that is a big part of it. It is also knowledge of reasonable standards.
Articulated knowledge of reasonable
Well,
standards.
that's an issue too, but...
Yeah.
Articulated or not.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
mean, if you know about it, if you consciously know about it,
Yeah.
right? And this is where you run into some stuff that you really have to be aware of your own biases.
What are you talking about?
Okay,
I'm flawless.
I had an incident where
Slow turn. Oh my God.
yeah, I ended up looking at a couple of cops, and they had their guns out. I had my gun out. It was 2:00 in the morning. Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Marc Show.
Well,
I don't have this story. Go on.
here's the thing. My daughter comes in and says somebody's outside,
Yeah.
right? And I come walking out. Oh, hi! It's the local PD.
Yeah.
I see the uniform. First, can I help you? Right? And it's like, hi, sir, we have a call for a prowler. Give me a minute. Right? I walk in. I put the gun down. I come walking back out. Right? And it's like, what's going on? Da, 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 da. And they explained it. So here these cops, they were actually in my backyard, too. There was one guy in the driveway, or a couple guys in the driveway. One guy was in the backyard, and I said, well, if there's going to be prowler, there'll be... But it's like, I've had people go, wow, well, if you were this skin color, you'd be dead. Right? No, that's not the case. The thing about it is, I went from, everybody had guns out in that situation, and we resolved the issue.
Which, when you look at how armed we all are versus how relatively considering how armed we all are, infrequently people die.
Right.
It probably happens a lot.
Yeah, and if you're armed, if you have the capability, right, if you have, whether it's martial arts training, you have weapons training, et cetera, boundaries become more important. Knowing how to enforce and negotiate the boundaries.
There's a weird inverse correlation here between, I don't know, the consequences of enforcement and
Well,
your
what happens
personal
if you
adherence, you know what
don't
I'm saying?
have if you don't have the means to back it up? Right, you're going to get squirrely scared.
What's the analogy Jeff uses? If a 6-year-old girl with a wooden spoon attacks you, technically she's armed. Let's tie in the threat assessment model here.
Kind
No,
of
seriously,
getting into the weeds, but
a little bit, but this
So-
is
Yeah.
you have to hold yourself to a higher standard when you have the capability to do more damage.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just go off half cocked and
And yet you'll find the people who go off the most are the ones who don't have the ability to back it up at other levels.
yeah. Because
So-
I don't want to get into an altercation where I have to defend myself with a weapon. I do everything in my power to stay out of that to begin with. So take a traffic incident, for example.
road rage type of thing.
I must have a sign on my car that says "Cut me off, I like it." I don't know. But that used to get me so worked up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just so worked up. And I started carrying a gun, and then they started cutting me off, and I just started laughing because
Oh.
it's like, A, that really ticks me off when you people do that, and B, I'm armed, and I'm like, ha 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 ha. Like, I hold all the cards in this hand. I'm not going to do anything with it
At the same time, I'm not going to give in to the impulse.
because I have to be the bigger person.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's actually a perfect callback to the leadership question.
Right.
Right. When I have more power, I also have more responsibility.
Right. And
with
see,
how I conduct
Like, you
myself.
never know who you're cutting off in traffic.
Yeah.
well, the thing is, I learned a long time ago, don't drive in a way that makes other people put on brakes.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a really good rule,
Yeah.
right? And the more I work with it, the less likely I am to get into altercations. The problem is,
I thought I was good at it until you were in the passenger seat a couple times, and you're like, "Yeah." I'm like, yeah, you're right." Fine.
yeah. But again, this is, the thing is, boundaries are so important for not getting into situations where you have to use physical force, right? That's the runway you want to keep in front, right?
Do me a favor here. Tie this back into your life experience. You've used force more often than 99.9% of people.
I was paid for it a lot of time, yeah.
Right. So I think one of the deep fascinations that your audience has with you is that you've done that and you've gone such a different direction than most of us would expect a person who's done those things to go. Why? As related to boundaries, obviously. Thanks
Once
a
again,
lot, Brian.
once again, it's like once you know the full road,
Yeah.
right? Again, when I mentioned that the most dangerous people I know are very, very polite, okay. I mean, simply stated, anytime you're involved in violence, there's a chance of somebody dying. Okay? That could be you. It's 50-50 crapshoot there. So the ego, the pride that used to drive me when I thought I had to impress everybody really changed when it boiled down to I protect my tribe, I protect my clan, I protect my family, or if I'm paid to do this. Okay, if I'm there, and I mean, one of the things I used to get hired every time, because I'd walk in, I say, my job is to protect the owner's interest. Right? So I had the parameters of where I operated within. Okay? Once you know these parameters, once you have a clear idea of the scale, that really changes your perspective about it. So it's no longer the mistakes here. You kind of quit making when you understand these.
Well, when you've seen how it can escalate,
Oh yeah, let me tell you, you want
you don't want to go back there.
you want a really screwed up experience, try walking and looking back and realizing that you're tracking blood. Okay. It's that one freaked me. Mm-hmm. Okay. But it's like the other thing is, yes, it's predicting weather, right? But the other thing is, it's like when you see people die, when you have friends that were killed. Okay, PTSD doesn't happen. PTSD doesn't happen if you win. Okay.
That's not something I heard from the Army. Keep going.
Well, the thing about it is, it's like the losses hurt.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I buried a lot of people. Okay. I've had some good friends, you know, get hurt. And then when I realized, you know, what I thought were victories weren't, right? That hurts too. You know, when I realized, like, I really hurt somebody and, you know, I really didn't have to. Mm-hmm. It, you know, yeah, I did it. I succeeded, except it was a bad decision.
You were in your own kind of automatic and you didn't shift into manual.
No. I was in a situation that I had put myself into that I didn't have to.
That sounds like the metagame level.
Yeah. And see, this is one of those things that, you know, nowadays my goal is to just get through the day. Right? Just, you know, and as often as can, you know, is this worth it? Okay, I'm not getting paid to do this anymore. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's, you know, what are my things? What are my protections? Who do I protect?
Yeah.
I protect my people.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a different mindset, and this is what happens with maturity as it kind of changes. Of, can I resolve this situation? Can I, you know, help people set their boundaries? Can I get more, you know, can we get along without the trauma drama versus this guy's looking for trauma drama for his own selfish reasons?
Let me pause you there. How has your perspective changed from protecting yourself, being maybe kind of a bar regular type of thing when you were younger, to having a family?
Well, it's different. I'm boring now.
Why?
I used to be cool.
Well,
Yeah, I used
right,
to
but
be cool.
that's a really interesting thing here, right? So I'm the outsider, which is why I get to ask these cool questions.
My whole universe has changed. I have people who count on me now for more than one thing. They count on me to, you know, keep a clean house, to get them to and from, to telling stories, to
Yes.
keeping them safe.
So what I'm searching for, I guess, is the context of this, right?
Well, it's about more than me
Yeah.
now.
Okay.
And see, that's also,
And
how does that affect your boundaries?
It kind of sounds a little bit like how you evolved, and it's not just about you anymore.
Right. And that's one of those things of...
I'm going to interject here briefly. I feel like most people who don't, like, let's say you're watching this and you don't know who Marc is, you have no contact with him or his history whatsoever. If I gave you an elevator pitch about, a thug from LA who grew up to care for a terminally ill woman, blah, 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 it sounds like a really unconvincing Lifetime movie. It really does. But this process is so fascinating, and you're not the only one, right? There have been other people who found their way out of that lifestyle with you, and boundaries are a fundamental part of that, and that is so interesting.
Right.
Partially because the people who didn't figure it out, whether or not you love them, are not with us anymore, right?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
And that's the thing
And
of boundaries change where you are when you are. And that's the thing of when people go, I want boundaries, they're talking about this microwave programmable, I push a button and I get boundaries. No.
Well, so that means they don't mean boundaries. That means that they want...
Solutions.
Yeah, I want an easy answer to a complex problem.
Right, and there is no such critter.
Thanks a lot, Brian.
Yeah, so anyway, let's wrap this up.
Absolutely.
But does that give you a general idea of, and we're still not done, There's still more about boundaries that's coming next time.
This is part, what, 2.5?
Yeah, this is just part 2.
So yeah, we're just gonna ramble and cut.
Yeah.
Ramble and cut.
All right, so rambling dissertations on boundaries and the way that intersects with life experience. I guess the Venn diagram of the idea of boundaries and the act of living life and how those things overlap. This is. I presume that this is going to be the second part of a 2-parter, just because we're at 1:45 right now and it's been a minute.
Yeah, it's a big subject.
Yeah.
Boundaries is huge.
Thanks, Brian.
If you have more questions for us, more thoughts on this, I think we're all relatively open books. We don't like to name names, but we'll certainly share experiences. So let us know. Let us know how this is relevant to your lives and where this, the rubber meets the road for you and where you're struggling with.
What do you want to know more about?
Yeah. So we, as always, are...
Just be nice about it.
The whole idea here is to put ourselves out there.
Oh, okay.
And, hopefully share our wisdom and give you guys a shortcut for your own lives. So let us know about that. And take a look at our Patreon, take a look at our YouTube channel, and the Safety Concepts Glossary for more basic, articulated knowledge of stuff you already know about, giving you labels for that. And we'll talk to you soon. Have a great day.